In today's episode, we delve into the life of a man who has, over the years, garnered a reputation as being singularly fixated on muscles, to the extent that some have labelled him a stalker, consumed by his obsession. The individual in question, Akinwale Arobieke, found himself embroiled in controversy for purportedly pestering young men and boys, coercing them to allow him to touch and measure their muscles, a behaviour that traces back to the 1980s and has been linked to grave outcomes. Born in Crumpsall Hospital, Manchester, on the 15th of July 1961, Akinwale's early life seemed innocuous enough, with no forewarning of the notoriety he would later achieve. The son of Akinwale Arobieke, a student of secretarial studies, and a father whose identity remains undisclosed, Akinwale's journey took a tumultuous turn when he was merely 6 months old, leading to his placement within the foster care system. His formative years saw him residing in a Barnardo's home, situated in Llandudno Conwy, before eventually relocating to Liverpool. This transition, from a seemingly unremarkable childhood to the emergence of a figure that would evoke both fear and fascination, underscores the unpredictable trajectory of Akinwale Arobieke's life. Welcome to the Pursuit of Perpetrators channel, where I unravel the veiled tales of cryptic crimes. During the 1980s, Akinwale Arobieke's focus shifted towards Gary Kelly, a 16-year-old athlete from Birkenhead, initiating a series of events marked by unease and fear. Arobieke's peculiar behaviour of following Kelly and requesting to touch his muscles significantly alarmed the young man, leading him to seek help from the police. The police, already equipped with Arobieke's photograph, promptly received Kelly's identification of Arobieke. Consequently, Arobieke was issued with a harassment order, effectively banning him from the vicinity of Kelly's residence and his family. However, the story did not conclude there. An encounter at a swimming pool, where Kelly was enjoying time with friends, reignited the ordeal. Upon sighting Arobieke, Kelly was overcome with terror, prompting him to abruptly separate from his friends in a desperate attempt to elude the man who had been shadowing him. His efforts to remain unnoticed, darting through the crowds, proved insufficient when Arobieke seemingly spotted him and began to follow. In a state of panic, Kelly sought refuge by fleeing to New Brighton's railway station, where he concealed himself in a stationary train and later meandered on the platform, hoping for safety. Upon sighting Arobieke once more, Kelly endeavoured to flee, his attempt tragically culminating as he crawled under a train and inadvertently came into contact with a live rail. This dire mishap resulted in Kelly's electrocution and subsequent death, a tragic outcome for someone merely trying to distance themselves from an individual from whom they ought to have been secure. Kelly's death left a profound void, not least for his girlfriend, who was 3 months pregnant at the time. In the legal proceedings that followed, an additional 12 alleged offences were compiled to remain on file, a measure taken to identify any emerging patterns in Arobieke's behaviour. Although initially convicted of manslaughter, this verdict was later overturned. Arobieke contested the conviction by asserting that there was no legislation prohibiting someone from merely observing trains, and that there was a lack of tangible evidence to prove he had been pursuing the teenager. Moreover, Arobieke raised concerns regarding perceived racial biases in the handling of his case by the prosecution and the police, leading to a compensation of £35,000 awarded to him following a Home Office inquiry in 1989. Ultimately, Arobieke served only 2.5 years in prison on the manslaughter charge, a conclusion that continued to evoke discussion and reflection on the complexities of the case. In the years that followed, Arobieke's encounters with the law did not cease, nor were the instances of his threats being taken seriously. By March of 1997, public attention was once again drawn to Arobieke's actions, this time by an article in the Sunday People. The piece highlighted that rugby teams had been put on alert after Arobieke shifted his focus towards some of the players. He faced allegations of using a counterfeit press pass to obtain players' addresses, launching attacks on their homes, vandalising their vehicles, and menacing them with violence. One incident involved a player reporting to his club that Arobieke had physically lifted him off the ground and proceeded to perform squats, all the while carrying him on his shoulders. Another player recounted a particularly distressing incident where a brick was hurled through his window, an act attributed to Arobieke. Despite these alarming actions being reported to the police, Arobieke managed to avoid a return to prison. In the year 2000, when she was just 13, Kelly Mullaney and her younger brother experienced a disturbing encounter. While they were on their way to the park, Arobieke approached Mullaney's brother, attempting to engage him in conversation and feel his muscles. Mullaney threatened to call the police on Arobieke, hoping to deter him. However, the situation escalated when 30 minutes later, upon their return home, they were met with aggressive knocking at their door, startling Kelly Mullaney and adding a new chapter to the troubling pattern of Arobieke's behaviour. Peering out the window to see Arobieke demanding her to come outside, Kelly Mullaney steadfastly refused. Her refusal was met with a terrifying response. Arobieke pushed a gun through the mailbox, the towering figure of 6 foot 5 inches hurling threats of death at her. Terrified, the teenager immediately called the police, who swiftly arrived in force with 6 vehicles. Arobieke was apprehended on charges of making threats to kill, yet intriguingly, no firearm was discovered. While Arobieke denied any malicious intent, he conceded that his actions might have been construed as threatening. He claimed his approach was in search of genuine friendship. On the 3rd of August 2001, Arobieke found himself facing a sentence of 30 months in prison, handed down by Warrington Crown Court. But for Miss Mullaney, the ordeal left a lingering sense of vulnerability. His menacing words haunted her. Consequently, she sought the safety of a witness protection program, relocating halfway across the country to escape the shadow of Arobieke's threats. Following Arobieke's conviction for harassment and making threats to kill Miss Mullaney, the Merseyside police initiated Operation ICE, an in-depth inquiry into his conduct. The investigation, involving interviews with over 120 individuals, unveiled a chilling pattern. Arobieke was found to frequently lurk outside gyms, sports clubs, and colleges in search of his preferred targets, muscular young men. His modus operandi involved approaching them with requests to touch their muscles or observe them performing squats, insisting persistently until his demands were met. Arobieke took his unsettling behaviour a step further by carrying a tape measure with him, using it to measure the calves, thighs, and chests of those he targeted. His fixation on certain individuals bordered on obsession, leading him to appear wherever they went, delving into intimate details about their lives and families. The situation escalated to the point where one family was compelled to enter a witness protection program to escape his incessant harassment. Upon searching Arobieke's home, police discovered a collection of photographs depicting muscular men, along with the personal details of more than a dozen individuals, including their phone numbers and body measurements. This extensive investigation culminated in Arobieke admitting to 15 separate charges of harassment and witness intimidation. Although an additional 61 counts of harassment were mentioned, these were not pursued in court. To safeguard the young men and witnesses involved, the judge issued 31 restraining orders. On the 15th of December 2003, Arobieke was sentenced to 6 years in prison. However, his incarceration did not mark the end of his controversial actions. Reports emerged from multiple inmates alleging that Arobieke had attempted to measure their biceps using a shoelace. Despite his denials and claims that the accusations were without merit, the persistence of these claims resulted in Arobieke being transferred between prisons 14 times. Upon Arobieke's release from prison in 2006, Merseyside police took the extraordinary step of petitioning for an interim sexual offences prevention order against him. This move was considered atypical, given Arobieke had never been convicted of a sexual offence, and he himself denied deriving sexual pleasure from touching muscles. Nonetheless, the order was granted, influenced by previous cases ordered to lie on file. Under the terms of the Sexual Offences Prevention Order, Arobieke was prohibited from touching individuals' muscles, requesting them to perform exercises in public, or approaching anyone under the age of 18. Additionally, the order imposed geographical restrictions, barring him from entering St Helens, Warrington and Widden, without explicit permission from either the Chief Constable of Merseyside or the Chief Constable of Cheshire. Arobieke was also forbidden from loitering around or entering any gyms and sports clubs, a significant limitation given his history of targeting individuals in these environments. The Sexual Offences Prevention Order, SOPO, initially imposed on an interim basis, was made permanent by Judge Bruce Macmillan in 2007. He justified his decision by pointing out the evidently sexual motivation behind Arobieke's actions of touching boys and young men. Arobieke conceded to having an unhealthy obsession with muscles and the potential for young men to enhance their physique, but continued to deny any sexual intent. Regardless of his proclaimed intentions, the SOPO stringently prohibited any interaction with minors or soliciting men to allow him to feel their muscles, a mandate Arobieke found himself unable or unwilling to comply with. On the 25th of May 2007, Arobieke violated the SOPO by making physical contact with a young man's bicep in Preston, Lancashire, resulting in a 15-month prison sentence. The following summer, in 2008, Arobieke sought to overturn the SOPO, arguing that counseling had enlightened him on his behaviour. He expressed remorse to the victims, acknowledging the intimidating effect of his physical presence, suggesting that their apparent consent could stem from fear rather than genuine willingness. However, his behaviour in court was erratic and unstable, leading the judge to maintain the SOPO. The second verified violation of the SOPO occurred in April 2009, shortly after the court had reaffirmed the order. Arobieke encountered a terrified 17-year-old boy in Birkenhead, attempting to touch his biceps. This incident led to an 18-month prison sentence, marking his 72nd confirmed offence. Subsequently, Arobieke faced an additional sentence of 2.5 years for yet another breach of the SOPO, this time for interacting with the muscles of a 16-year-old boy in Llandudno, North Wales. In his defence, Arobieke contended in court that the accusations were part of a hoax. He highlighted the frequency of calls to the police, reporting his presence in various locations across the country, even at times when he was actually incarcerated. Undeterred by Arobieke's defence, the judge ruled against him. However, the tide began to turn in August 2013, when Arobieke started to see success in his court battles. He was acquitted of all charges related to violating his SOPO, after arguing in his own defence that he was the target of a modern-day witch hunt. His argument gained traction due in part to the mishandling of the case by police officers. They were accused of eagerly seeking to confirm his guilt to such an extent that they approached an alleged victim before the 16-year-old was prepared to come forward. Additionally, the police's continuous reference to him by the nickname Purple Aki, a term with racist connotations, alleging that his skin tone was so dark it appeared purple, further undermined their case, casting a shadow of misconduct over their efforts. Another case against Arobieke collapsed in October 2013, after it was revealed that an officer involved had engaged in provocation towards Arobieke, alongside other questionable actions. Consequently, Arobieke was not charged. Despite this, he had spent nearly 2 years in remand, awaiting charges that were either eventually dropped or from which he was acquitted. Nevertheless, Arobieke found himself facing charges once again for breaching his SOPO on the 1st of October 2015. Identifying himself as Andy, he encountered a student on a train and requested to feel and measure the student's biceps. The student remained unaware of whom he had interacted with until he stumbled upon an article about Arobieke a month later. Despite Arobieke's assertion that the police had orchestrated a setup, a unanimous jury verdict led to his conviction. However, Arobieke eventually saw the Sexual Offences Protection Order against him lifted. In May 2016, at Manchester Crown Court, Judge Richard Mansell ruled that there was insufficient evidence to prove Arobieke derived sexual satisfaction from touching his victim's muscles, deeming the restrictions of the order unjustifiable. Now, the moniker Purple Aki has transcended into the realm of urban myth within the UK's underworld, inspiring parody accounts across various social media platforms. An Instagram page advocates for the legalisation of cannabis in his name, while a Twitter account displays his face, edited onto an image of a naked muscular figure. The fear that once cloaked his actions has significantly diminished, relegating him, in the eyes of many, to the status of a local bogeyman. This shift raises a pertinent question. Does this transformation strip a predator of his power, or does it inadvertently perpetuate racial stereotypes, potentially causing more harm than good? Share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. If you find my investigative analysis revealing, please hit like on this video, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the Pursuit of Perpetrators channel. Also, make sure you smash the bell icon to stay updated whenever I release a new video. I greatly appreciate your support and look forward to catching up with you tomorrow. Until then, keep your curiosity piqued and never cease in your quest for the truth.